Today, I'm going to do a tier ranking from F to S of all the original and new Upper Moon backstories to see which one is the absolute saddest and which ones are actually not that sad. Like, what do you think about Kaigaku's backstory? It simply wasn't sad. In fact, it was straight up the person responsible for why his life is tragic. Imagine running into a demon and your first instinct is to sell off the closest thing to an actual family you had. It's just messed up. And no, I don't think it's bad writing, but all Kaigaku's backstory does is show that he's extraordinarily selfish. So yeah, no tears shed for this guy. I'm placing it in tier F. Moving on, we have Nakime. Her backstory wasn't revealed in the manga, but it was included in the second official Demon Slayer fanbook. She was a struggling biwa musician who made ends meet by playing string instruments in the only kimono she owned. Sadly, her husband was a useless gambling addict who regularly wasted her money until one day he went too far. He sold her only kimono that she was supposed to wear for her music performance. Nakime is enraged. She kills him and then goes to play music in her old torn-out dress. The audience looked down on her, but when she played, her music was so beautiful that the entire crowd was in awe. This led to Nakime developing a dark habit of always killing someone before her music performance. Though one day, the victim she chooses to kill ends up being Muzan. She fails, but Muzan is impressed by her and makes her a top-tier demon. Honestly, this is actually a pretty depressing backstory for a character who never gets more than a few seconds of screen time. I hope we get it animated in one of the Infinity Castle arc movies. As for where I'm gonna place it, I'd say it deserves a place in tier C. It shows that what pushed Nakime into Breaking Bad was her poverty, insecurity, and sheer lack of genuine love in her life. Pretty tragic if you ask me. Next up, we have Gyoko. His backstory was also revealed in the second official fanbook. Gyoko's real name was Managi, and he grew up in a fishing village by the coast. Things were normal until one day his parents went on a fishing trip but never came back until their bodies washed ashore. When Managi sees their corpses, he finds them fascinating and becomes obsessed with dead bodies. The villagers thought he was crazy and made him out to be an outcast. Of course, they were right. I mean, who the hell looks at their parents' corpses and starts judging them as if they were pieces of art? Anyways, one day, a kid insulted him, and he ended up not just killing the kid, but hiding the corpse in a fishing pot. When the parents find out, they stab Managi with a fishing spear and leave him to die. 12 hours pass by, and he's just mere moments away from his death when Muzan comes across him and makes him a demon. Now I know what you're thinking. Isn't Nakime's backstory a lot sadder than this? Yep, that's why I'm putting this one into tier D. Nakime was driven mad because of her circumstances, while Gyoko just had an odd and twisted way of processing the trauma from losing his parents. You can tell that the reason he was killed and also the reason why he got so mad at Moichiro is because his taste in art was insulted. Now, considering how he also associates art with his parents' dead bodies, it makes sense why he got so angry, right? Now it's time for the top 5 Upper Moon backstories. Let's talk about Hantengu. Most of his backstory was revealed through a collage of moments in chapter 126, but the anime expands on it during the 3rd season. Hantengu was a habitual liar from a young age. He'd lie and put the blame onto others while always making himself look like a victim. It was so bad that even when he committed theft or murder, he would lie through his teeth and insist on his innocence. He married multiple times in his life and also had children. But his paranoia always made him think that his family is mistreating him, and so he'd end up killing them too. He killed, he stole, and he lied. Rinse and repeat. Until finally, he was caught and sentenced to death. He gets approached by Muzan before his death by decapitation, and that's when he becomes a demon. He then kills the magistrate who ordered his execution. Frankly, there's nothing remotely sad about Hantengu's backstory, and he did everything to himself. It's also rather fitting how his death at Tanjiro's hands was by decapitation. I'd say this one goes in tier F. He belongs with trash like Kaigaku. Moving on, we have Upper Moon 2 Doma. Over a century ago, Doma was born, but the special thing about his birth is that he was born with rainbow-colored eyes and pale hair. Seeing this, people thought that he's a divine messenger for them to build their connection with the gods. His parents end up making him a cult leader, and surprisingly enough, Doma played that role extraordinarily well. He had zero sense of empathy. Even when his mother killed his father because of an affair and then also killed herself, he just felt annoyed because of the smell of blood. He's always been completely apathetic, and his backstory does a phenomenal job of portraying that. But is it particularly sad? Nah. For this, I put him in tier E. At number 3, we have Upper Moon 1 Kokoshibo, and this backstory goes hard. Despite his envy and resentment for his brother, deep down, he just wanted to be like him. He thought he was special and his brother was weak and useless. But then the day when Yoriichi picked up a sword, he managed to defeat their skilled instructor. The contrast between what he thought of his brother versus who his brother actually was simply too much for Michikatsu to handle. Over the years, the self-hate and the resentment for his brother died down, but it all came back in full throttle when he was saved by Yoriichi. If only Michikatsu knew that he actually loved his brother. If only Michikatsu had become the moon to his brother's sun. Although the backstory of the two brothers are very important to the whole series, I think the others on this list have even sadder backstories that simply can't compare. And for that, Michikatsu is at tier B. Next, we have the cursed siblings Daki and Gyutaro. The two of them grew up in extreme poverty. Gyutaro was born first, but his mother wanted him dead, and he was forced to eat insects to survive. When Daki was born, he felt genuine happiness for the first time and dedicated his life to protecting her. But one day, he found his sister's burnt body lying in a ditch. As we later learn, she had stabbed a customer's eye, and he's the one responsible for burning her alive. As for why she stabbed him, we learned later in the fanbooks that not only is it because he wanted her body, but because he insulted her brother along with it. In the end, Gyutaro goes mad with rage and kills both the brothel manager and the samurai. He then again tries to seek help, but to no avail, until eventually Doma comes across them and offers to transform them into demons. Gyutaro accepts the offer, and just like that, his sister's life is saved. The bond between these two. How the anime does justice to these panels by showing us how much Gyutaro actually loves his little sister. How much Daki gave his life meaning, and what a bright future Daki could have had. Honestly, it's hard to watch episode 11 of the second season without bawling your eyes out. If only these two siblings had a proper childhood, they would have never become demons. If only their life wasn't hell, they would have never found solace in demonhood, especially when these two parallel Nezuko and Tanjiro. I'd say it's a solid tier A backstory. And if it weren't for the backstory we have next, it could have been the best Upper Moon backstory. And finally, at number 1, no one but Akaza could take the crown. The reason Akaza's backstory is so tragic is because he experienced pure hell twice. Akaza's name before becoming a demon was Hakuji. He was born and raised in the slums of Edo, and he had to pickpocket in order to buy medicine for his sick father. He got caught once. They beat him up, carved tattoos all over his body, and called him a demon child. He got caught twice again, but after his third beating, his father took his own life because he couldn't handle his son stealing just to buy medicine for his sick self. He leaves a letter that tells Hakuji to live an honest life from here on out. This breaks him. He's banished from Edo and starts fighting people to distract himself from the pain of losing his father. One day, Hakuji gets into a fight with the owner of a dojo and suffers a humiliating loss. The owner then takes him in and also asks him to take care of his sick daughter. Her name is Koyuki, and they fall in love. The two of them decide to marry each other, and Hakuji also gets the blessing from the dojo owner. Once again, his life starts blooming. He was finally living like his late father wanted him to live. But unfortunately, as fate would have it, after he defeats a rival dojo that was threatening Koyuki, they poison the well, which leads to Koyuki and her father's death. Hakuji is overwhelmed with pure heartbreak when he finds out. He kills all 67 of them with just his fists. By the time Muzan comes across him, Hakuji already lost his will to live because he had nothing left to protect. He didn't even agree to be a demon. He was just a shell at that point. Yep, that's an S-tier backstory alright. But after that happened to him, it made sense why he gave up and became a demon. But you know what? Even after all that, Akaza was still a man. He never killed a woman and was only about throwing hands with fellow strong fighters. Do you agree with this tier list or not? If you enjoyed this video, I also explained and ranked all the saddest Hashira's backstories here.